We've got issues.
My therapist put her political agenda before my mental health.
Some therapists have actually said, I can't see you if you embrace certain beliefs.
So huge chunks of the country that just are being excluded from care.
I believe there are two sexes, and I want to make sure you understand that before you start with me.
Therapy is so important, but do I have to worry about them putting their political bias before my mental health?
I guess the bottom line is you just can't all have Dr. Phil. Well, America, we've got issues. None more evident than when it comes to supposedly trusted professionals and big businesses using their social and political biases to attack every facet of this country. And you know, I have been very vocal about this. We have social media platforms censoring free speech, particularly political viewpoints. I've seen this just in the last few days. I put up a video about Israel. Choked right down until it disappeared. Media outlets foregoing journalistic integrity in an attempt to sway elections. Institutions of higher education endorsing what I call intellectual rot and allowing activism to supersede what's best for students. Corporations running their own agendas and turning a blind eye to meritocracy. And there is so much more, including now many claiming mental health professionals, with the majority being liberal, bringing their socio-political agendas into therapy sessions, resulting in many conservative therapists feeling attacked and patients feeling the need to censor themselves or forego much-needed treatment completely. Take a look.
My therapist put her political agenda before my mental health.
I created a directory for conservative clients to avoid bias from liberal therapists.
Therapists are being doxxed and canceled based on their own political beliefs.
Therapy has always been my safe place, but I don't have that anymore.
Cancel culture is real for therapists who voice their political opinions online.
Well, is this perception or reality? To see just how prevalent bias is in therapy, we conducted a survey and asked, have you been unable to find a therapist or counselor who can be unbiased about your opinion about social political issues? Shockingly, 34% of respondents said yes. They are unable to find an unbiased therapist. My first guess is Dr. Andrew Hartz. Now, Dr. Hartz is a well-respected clinical psychologist who not only has written numerous published articles on mental health, but is also the founder of the Open Therapy Institute, an organization focused on removing bias from mental health care across the country.
The mental health field has gotten much more biased, especially over the past decade. The focus on identity politics in particular is really starting to dominate training and come into treatment at institutes, hospitals, universities. Where the problem lies is that the field is prioritizing political ideologies and becoming less patient-centered. The Open Therapy Institute is highlighting perspectives and issues that are overlooked in the field because of political bias. Like, if you're dealing with anti-white racial aggression, you're probably self-censoring about it, and you probably feel pretty isolated about it. And maybe you're afraid of speaking up because you think you're gonna get canceled. It's not uncommon for one person to have 5 issues on that chart. I've been at training clinics where I was taught that at the beginning of treatment, the first question is, what are your pronouns? I've also been at places that said that every therapy needed to talk about race. There are some therapists who will actively confront patients about politics. There's also subtler forms of bias where they might just avoid topics or shut down conversations. Research has shown that about 9 out of 10 therapists are liberal, and over time, this has contributed to more people avoiding care altogether. People are impacted by what's happening in the culture, and it comes into the therapy room. So therapists need to be skilled in how to respond to these issues.
It's good to see you. You and I met, gosh, it's been over a year ago, right?
Yeah.
And that happened because I read an article that you had written, and I was so impacted by it that I sent you an email, right?
Yeah.
And commented on what you were doing and how important I thought it was. Talk about what you are doing with open therapy and what's the objective and the intent.
So we're addressing socio-political bias throughout mental health care. We're looking at issues that are overlooked because of bias, patient populations that are overlooked because of bias, and different skills therapists need to develop to work with diverse viewpoints.
Why did this hit your radar?
I saw the field becoming intensely politicized, where at the beginning, there wasn't a lot of politics in training, and by the end, it was every week, sometimes every day, of very politicized trainings.
I was trained a long time ago. I remember carrying the stone tablets into, but never was there a focus on political issues, psychosocial issues. It was all clinical. I understand now that parts of the protocol have to do with actually dealing with political issues, at least psychosocial issues that we would never have even thought about being part of the narrative between a client and their therapist.
100%. I mean, the field is losing its focus on patient-centered care. And these new treatment models that are being rolled out are not patient-centered. They prioritize social justice around race, gender, sexuality, other issues above what's in the best interest for the patient. So it's not uncommon for therapists to attack their patients as racist or sexist or move the conversation towards these social justice issues, even when that's not a patient concern.
You've identified 50 to 60 political issues where bias is at play.
So it's people who have aggressively politicized training at work, people who are harassed for their viewpoint or canceled, people who self-censor, masculinity issues, faith-based issues, things that conservative patients might experience in therapy. Some of them are controversial, like women who experience regret about having an abortion. It's not such a rare experience, but it comes up in therapy, and therapists need to be skilled at responding in a patient-centered way to these issues.
I don't want our conversation here to keep people from seeking care.
Right.
I don't want to sensationalize this, I don't want to overblow it, but I'm real strong on giving people a sense that there is a bill of patient rights, and patients have the right to say, what do you do? What's your training? What are my rights? Do I have the right to exclude this?
Right.
Patients have the right to set boundaries, correct?
Yes.
And some therapists have actually said, I can't see you if you embrace certain beliefs. I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, some clinics, for example, that just say, we're not supporting Trump voters. That happened to a colleague of mine. So huge chunks of the country that just are being excluded from care at certain places.
If somebody comes in wearing a MAGA hat and somebody says, hey, listen, I just can't help you with your depression, I can't help you with your marital discord, I can't help you with your parenting issues because you're wearing a MAGA hat, and that tells me all I need to know about you, I can't help you. How is that even possible?
Right. I think the field is losing its focus from patient-centered care. And you're right. A decade or two ago, that wouldn't have happened. Something's changed in the field in the past 10 years.
All right. Well, look, we're going to add someone in the conversation in a minute. A teen who says her therapist crossed the line after subjecting her to a shocking political rant. We're going to meet this young woman after the break. Poor sleep impacts productivity, focus, and energy, making it difficult to tackle daily tasks effectively. Tossing and turning through the night leaves many feeling drained and unmotivated. Beam's Dream Powder offers a solution. This science-backed healthy nighttime blend is clinically shown to improve sleep, helping users fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up refreshed without grogginess. Dream combines powerful, all-natural ingredients like reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin, creating a blend designed for consistent, restful nights. It has become an essential part of nightly routines for those seeking better sleep. The ultimate sleep refresh for the new year. Try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Dr. Phil and use code Dr. Phil at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Dr. Phil and use code Dr. Phil for up to 40% off. Well, my next guest, Claire, says as a teen, navigating her life, therapy had always been her safe place. But she says that all changed when her trusted therapist of 4 years. Now, let me stop on that. Her trusted therapist of 4 years. That means there had been a real investment in this therapeutic relationship. A lot of time spent, a lot of rapport building, a lot of effort and energy into building a trust relationship. A lot of history had gone into this. Changed from offering support to pushing an extreme political agenda. Now, Claire says the betrayal that she felt left her feeling abandoned right before she left for college. She says this was a time that she needed her therapist the most.
My therapist was a mother figure to me. We were really, really close. She's Jewish and I'm pagan, but she never, ever made me feel uncomfortable. In summer 2023, my therapist decided to move her and her whole family to Israel because she didn't feel safe. So once she moved away, we started doing therapy sessions online. In August 2024, she was in San Diego, and I was ecstatic. So we met up at the park near my house. And the therapy session was really good up until I started talking about college that I'm going to. Well, I packed everything. She said, I have to tell you something that breaches what we should be saying. I assumed it would be something really heartwarming, and instead she told me that college is basically a scam because all my professors are trying to indoctrinate me and I can't trust anyone but her. It was very heavily political and it made me feel super uncomfortable. My first emotional reaction was anger. You've been my therapist for 4 years and you're gonna ruin it all because you needed to share this political bias with me. Losing a therapist was heartbreaking, but I know I cannot go back to somebody who decides to put their political views and bias before my mental health.
4 years is a lot of investment, right?
Yeah. I think anyone in therapy knows it's so hard to find a good therapist, and it just clicked with her, and I haven't clicked with any therapist like that. She was a mother figure to me, and it's hard to lose that.
Yeah. What happened? What brought it about? I mean, clearly she was giving you all these catastrophic views of going to college.
So she moved into a very politically heavy area. She moved to Israel about a couple weeks before it all started happening, and she had an opportunity to come home, and we had kind of almost stopped seeing each other because I can't really do online therapy. It just doesn't work for me, and the lag, and she didn't seem very connected to me as much. And I saw her, we had a good therapy session, and then she went on a 15-minute rant about how college is a scam and everything that I'm learning is wrong and that I can't believe anyone but her. And I just had to sit there and listen because I didn't want to aggravate her. I mean, she's someone so close to me. I just sat and let it happen.
And she told you not to trust your professors. They're going to brainwash you. The government's behind it all.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
No, I can't see any therapeutic rationale for injecting politics into a session that way.
But there is a place, and tell me if you agree or disagree with this, and I know you will, but there is a place where a therapist, within certain boundaries, you do have relationship building. There is a point where you build some trust, there is some personal disclosure, there is some bonding that takes place. It's not like robot spitting out evidence-based therapy elements, pop, 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 pop. There has to be some humanizing, what Carl Rogers would call it, empathy, warmth, and genuineness, where there is some human connection that makes it feel real. And you felt that with her, right?
Of course.
There was a connection within boundaries. There has to be some humanizing of the process.
100%. And there are times when therapists make disclosures and it's good for treatment.
They might relate a story or an experience that they've had. It stays client-centered, but they might personalize or humanize to put a face on it to make it real. But to project their values onto someone, it sounded very much like that therapists needed therapy and took it out on you.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And did that cause you to be less likely to seek support elsewise?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just moved, so obviously I haven't even started looking for a therapist. I'd love to have one just because I think that therapy is so important in today's age. I think even small issues can be so much more helpful when you talk to somebody professionally. But I have to worry about, I won't have this connection with this therapist as I did with my old one, and or do I have to worry about them putting their political bias before my mental health?
Yeah, and this happened after 4 years.
Right. 4 years, I never thought this would happen. It was baffling.
Yeah. Yeah, that might have had some, well, might have been a little over-involved on her part as well, but that's a whole other issue. But are there things that you can do that you feel like you could assert in a relationship to protect yourself going forward and initiate another relationship?
Yeah, I think I'm just definitely gonna tell my new therapist, hey, this is something that's happened to me, and hopefully they are understanding of it just like they're understanding of all the things that I've gone through, because that's what a therapist should do. They should be listening and they should be helping.
Yeah. So you might start a relationship by saying, let's talk about boundaries here.
Yeah.
I don't give a damn what you think about A, B, and C, so let's talk about me.
I just didn't think that I'd have to put boundaries down, and my therapist of 4 years, I thought, their job is you listen to everything they say. That's the whole point of a therapist. They're giving you information that they've been taught to help you, and you listen. So you break all your protective walls and your barriers and your mental health concerns down, and you listen. So for that to happen, it definitely puts up even more protective layers and more guards.
Yeah, I'm not saying you should have to do that, but it is what it is. And I would rather you have to assert yourself some in the beginning and check in on that than not have something that might help you as you navigate a new phase in your life, being in college on your own for the first time, facing some new challenges, needing maybe a check-in. What would your advice be, doctor?
I think there are good therapists out there, and you can find somebody. And I think talking about this in particular could be tremendously helpful if you get the right therapist.
Yeah, and giving it a voice does help.
Yeah, I think that even just sharing my story on social media has been helpful. The responses that I got on TikTok, where the original video where you guys found me was tremendous. I felt comforted just telling my story and even coming here so that other kids don't have to deal with what I dealt with.
And I guess the bottom line is you just can't all have Dr. Phil. I mean, all right. Just kidding. Just kidding. Next, we're going to add to the conversation a licensed therapist who says she requires all prospective clients to check her social media so they know she is a conservative who only deals in reality and will challenge any non-fact-based position on social justice topics. We're going to add her to the conversation after the break. My next guest, Soad, is a respected licensed marriage and family therapist who admits she is not shy about sharing her conservative opinions on social media. She says she refuses to allow her liberal patients to play the victim, and in order to best help them, will challenge their non-reality-based feelings on any social justice topic.
One of the things that I do prior to actually beginning sessions with a client is we have a consultation. I tell them to go to my social media. Make sure that they're very comfortable with what they see. They will find me loving Trump. They will find me disliking Kamala. They will find me possibly making fun of progressive views. There was a huge shift that happened in 2016 when Trump won, and politics entered the therapy room.
It's a very sad thing because there is now a huge divide between my liberal colleagues and myself, who is more conservative. They do not believe that I have a place in this field and I have no right to take care of any clients whatsoever.
There is a distinct difference I have noticed between liberal patients or conservative ones. And most times it has to do with the way they view being a victim. Liberals tend to take on that victimhood personality. For example, I can have someone come to me and say, I didn't get a promotion because I'm a girl. And I push back and challenge and say, is it because you're a girl or is it that you just suck? When I work with clients, the number one baseline that I work with is reality. It's not my truth or their truth, but the actual truth of life. It's very open and honest, and it's very me.
So, Ed, you say you receive hateful comments from a lot of your liberal colleagues.
Yes.
Like what?
That I shouldn't be in the position that I'm at because I have no morals. I'm a racist, I'm a homophobe, I'm a transphobe, every ism, only because I voted for Trump and I'm also a conservative.
And you say if somebody is coming in to see you, you require them to look at your social media and all so they know what they're getting when they come.
Absolutely. So I fully believe that in the therapy room, that is not a time for me to talk about who I am or what I'm about. But I do think it's fair that they have some kind of inkling of what I'm about. Make sure that you're comfortable with my values, because that's who's going to be helping you. I'm a pivotal part of their life. I'm someone that's going to be guiding them in some way, and I want them to trust me. So that's why I do it, because once we're in the therapy room, I say nothing about myself.
$36 trillion. That is the U.S. debt, and it gets deeper and deeper by the day. Our debt has never been higher, nor have the stakes. The government is looking to slash the federal budget by $2 trillion, and no one knows what that will mean for your job, savings, and future. I've seen a lot in my time, and there's one thing I know for sure. You need to prepare before it's too late. I trust Preserve Gold to help protect my wealth, and I strongly urge you to do the same. They are the only precious metals firm I trust and recommend to my family, friends, and audience, and they have a special offer just for you. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue throughout 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 today. We have a list of the topics that you challenge clients on. Climate change, abortion, sexism at work, racism, vaccines, book bans, poly relationships versus monogamous relationships. Men are all horrible and misogynistic. Female beliefs about career goals and family goals, CRT in schools, BLM. But if somebody comes to you because they're kind of stuck in grief, for example, none of this would ever come up.
Never. I meet my clients where they're at. If none of that comes up, then it's about what's in the room. And if they came to me about grief and someone passing away and that's what they're struggling with, if they happen to mention any of those things within that topic, I still wouldn't push that topic. The topic is grief. And that's what I have to help them with.
How would these things come up? I mean,
so the example that I gave during my interview is I've had female clients. I see a lot of female clients that are in the tech world who feel sometimes that they don't get promotions because of their sex. And so I challenge that and push that because I know them. I've spent years with them. I know what they're good at and I know what they're not good at. So I may know that they're actually someone that's not really up for promotion. Like, I wouldn't pick you myself. There are things that you're lacking. And so I gently kind of say, I don't necessarily say they suck, but I do try to say like, hey, is it really that you're a female? Or remember last week when you told me how you left work 3 hours early and you had no remorse about it? Can we talk about that? And maybe that's how it plays into this. That's how I challenge them.
why is it important that they read your social media in order for you to give them a reality check?
I'll give an example. I have quite a few trans-identified clients. Prior to them beginning with me, I mentioned to them, please go to my social media, because I believe there are two sexes. And I want to make sure you understand that before you start with it. I am not going to placate into this. They need to be comfortable with me having that baseline of reality. And if they're not comfortable with that, then definitely I'll give you the referrals to go find another therapist.
Well, here are some examples of your social media posts. Democrats spent the last year pushing for felons to vote, only to shame us for voting for a felon. Any gender-affirming surgery done on a child is pure evil, no other way of looking at it, period. Men cannot be women. The audience at the DNC is proof mind control is real. Children are imaginative, creative, explorative, curious, and confused. They are not trans. So those are fair representations of the kind of things?
100%. I believe in all of those statements.
Andrew, how do you see having a client?
I think when you have your patients read your social media prior to starting treatment, it puts those issues in the treatment, even if they're not necessarily pertinent. I wouldn't disclose those things unless there was a specific treatment-focused reason to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And I would agree. I wouldn't bring him into the therapy room.
But if they have to read it before they start therapy with you, I think that is bringing it in.
Okay, and I challenge that as the therapist that I am. If they were to happen to read it afterwards, and we developed a relationship of 4 years, and they find out that I'm someone totally different than what they believe, that I think would be more damaging than if they knew right off the bat who they're actually getting into a relationship with.
I think that you can't disclose everything about your life to the patients before treatment starts, and it shouldn't necessarily come up, especially if it's not the reason why they're there. So.
Correct. In the treatment room, correct.
But you think it's just transparency?
Yes. My social media is mine. Has nothing to do with my treatment with them. 70 to 80% of my clients are liberals. They are very comfortable sitting in the room with me. I don't judge them. I don't hurt them. I don't act like their mom. I act like their therapist. I take care of them. Those are my beliefs and values. And the beautiful part about that is to prove and show we can have differences of opinions and still have relationships. I think we've lost that.
So you think telling them up front might save them time where they say, look, if I'd have known what you thought, I might not have invested all this time with somebody that could not be empathetic with my situation.
Absolutely.
All right, we got to take a break. We're going to add a licensed clinical counselor who says she's facing the cancel culture vultures online over her political social media post. But the question is, does being a mental health professional cancel the right to free speech? We're going to add that to the conversation after the break. My next guest, Megan, is a licensed clinical counselor who says due to the conservative viewpoints she shares on social media, she is receiving hateful attacks and even threats of people trying to get her license revoked.
Whenever I'm in a session with a client, my political beliefs will never come into the session. For me, TikTok has been an amazing outlet for that.
Anything to raise the cost of presumptive jobs, I will veto it.
What? The cost of what?
It's my social media. It has nothing to do with my professional identity.
I'm Jeff. Oh, your nails are painted. Yeah, is that a problem?
Sometimes I'll post funny skits, sometimes I'll post, more political commentary, and sometimes I will mention, that I'm either conservative or that I'm a therapist, and that's when I get the most backlash. I've had people mass report my page, and I've been doxxed. I've had people threaten to file complaints against my license to the board. I get a lot of, honey, your racism is showing. Think it through, Felicia. Don't be a bigot. Don't you have housework you should be doing? Facing harassment has only motivated me to keep going. And I really believe in the mental health field. I don't want to see it completely destroyed by political activism from the left. I want to preserve it. I want to be somebody who's fighting for it.
Well, you think that cancel culture is creeping into this field, and being a conservative, you're at risk.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. It's a liberal field. I actually just saw a TikTok the other day of someone who was kind of highlighting that a little bit in terms of looking at FEC the Federal Election Commission, looking at donations between Democrats and Republicans. For every 26 Democrat donations received, there was one Republican donation received from people who identified as psychotherapists. It seems like a pretty big discrepancy to me.
How liberal do you think it is, Andrew?
It's very left-leaning, for sure. I haven't seen that study, but I've seen others that point in a similar direction.
There's a study in 2012, and 94% of therapists are liberal.
Well, a meta-analysis of all of these surveys say 85% are liberal, and there's a 10.5 to 1 ratio on campuses, and that 20% are afraid to express their views, and 37.5% admit discriminating against conservative colleagues, which is pretty bad. There's an 11 to 1 liberal to conservative ratio on major college campuses in terms of academia professionals that are trainings, which means that's going to influence who comes out if those values get passed on. So it's probably going to get worse, not better.
Right. That seems to be the trend. I'm still in my first decade of practice. I still feel like a young professional in this field. And when I started my journey, things were already politicized and polarized. But I always felt super lucky and blessed by the people that I had training me and educating me and guiding me. They always challenged and pushed back against, sort of the mainstream narratives, and really challenged us to be those therapists that were entering the field and being open and safe for everyone, not just for the people.
How do you deal with it? When you get hate mail criticisms or whatever,
right.
How do you deal with it?
Well, I definitely try to practice what I preach in terms of not paying too much attention to the trolls and the hate that I get online. It can be hard. It can be hard to ignore, but I definitely try.
Yeah, because some of the comments you get are get help, future old hag, Jesus, shut the blank up, honey, your racism is showing, please stop breeding, uneducated and ignorant, this is what mental illness looks like. How many of these kinds of things will you get in a month?
Oh man, I couldn't even tell you. And it definitely depends on how much I'm posting. So after facing, people coming after my license and doxing me, trying to, kind of blast my information, my personal information online, I definitely withdrew quite a bit from posting on social media, which is hard because that's really something that I enjoy doing. And it's my personal platform. It's not something that I integrate into my practice at all in any way. I try to just focus on my work and keep that separate. Just keep going, because I don't want to give up on this profession. I really do believe in it, and I don't want to just let it go to the left.
Well, you have to decide to keep your power and not give it away, and sometimes the vast majority of it is all driven by what I call the tyranny of the fringe. It's a small group of people trying to drive a big opinion. Next, so what are the solutions to making sure Americans can find unbiased and judgment-free mental health care? We're going to hear from Dr. Hartz about what he and Open Therapy Institute are doing to help both therapists and patients after the break. And we'll be right back. Well, tonight we've been discussing how many claim some mental health professionals and even psychology professors have placed their own socio-political ideologies over what's best for their patients or clients and students that are entering the field. And the question is, where is this coming from? Why is it happening? And our guest expert, Dr. Andrew Hartz, actually is trying to do something about this with the Open Therapy Institute.
Well, we're training therapists to be more skilled at working with diverse viewpoints. We have a membership where therapists can join and have group consultation to develop their skills. We're raising awareness in the public around these issues. We're writing about these issues and doing research on them. And we are offering clinical services to people who want an open therapist.
And who's signing up for this kind of continuing education? Are they conservative therapists, liberal therapists?
I think we have about 50-50 mix right now.
Are they the ones that have the biases, or are they the ones that just recognize it exists?
Well, I think of bias as a spectrum. There's activist therapists that are deliberately politicizing sessions. There are also therapists who have biases that are more subtle. You know, they're avoiding topics, shutting down conversation. And then there's therapists who mean well and want to help with patients, but they don't know how to help. They don't know how to help somebody who's self-censoring. And so we're trying to help train them.
And how do you know whether what you're doing is impacting an individual therapist or the field in general?
That's a good question. I mean, I think we want, one of them is just getting more literature on these topics. The field needs to be researching, writing case studies, documenting what's happening. The poll you showed where patients report not being able to find a therapist that they trust, we want that number to be 0%.
And, you know, a lot of people misidentify where they are. They think they're more open than they are. Before tonight's taping, we had the audience take a political typology quiz created by the Pew Institute. And the focus of the quiz was to identify which of 9 political typology groups best matched the quiz taker. And the groups ranged from the progressive left and stressed sideliners to faith and flag conservatives. Rhonda considers herself independent, libertarian, doesn't believe in prejudice of any kind, open and not judgmental, and was really shocked with the quiz results. Rhonda, how did it turn out for you?
Well, it turned out way more conservative than I really am.
You were almost off the chart, weren't you?
Yes.
Faith and flag conservative, as far to the right as you can be?
Yes.
That surprised you?
It did surprise me. But then the more I've thought about it, Dr. Phil, there were 14 questions, and I am made up of a lot more than 14 questions.
Right.
And there was nothing about education, nothing about women's rights, women's choice, things, other things that I feel would put me more toward the middle of the spectrum.
It's thought-provoking, isn't it?
Right, it really is.
Yeah. And Jacob, you considered yourself independent, libertarian, leaned a little right, but not as far as the quiz results said.
Right, yeah, I ended up in the committed conservatives. I figured I would be a little right, but I didn't think I would be that right given my ardent libertarian beliefs. I thought I would be pretty in the middle, but...
Yeah. And you were the second furthest
Correct.
to the right.
Yes.
Staunchly conservative and overwhelmingly Republican.
Correct.
True? I mean...
I'm not a member of the Republican Party. I'm very much an independent when it comes to political parties. I think if we took this 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, I probably would have been more in the middle. But I think we've kind of shifted left societally.
Most of you, it came out about where you thought you were, right? If it was close to where you thought you were, raise your hand. Okay, yeah, so I don't vouch for the reliability or validity. It was a thought-provoking exercise. That's all. My final thoughts after the break. I don't think there's anything that we do that we don't approach it with some bias. And bias is not necessarily a bad word. We might like something, we might not like something, we might think something's easy, we might think it's something hard. We all come into things with some expectation. Very few things are we just completely zero about. But then we get into things where we come in with a preconceived notion about things that are emotionally charged, they're politically charged. And when we get into certain roles in our society, whether it's as an employer or a mental health professional, if we come into that situation with a preconceived notion about politics or something that can impact that vulnerable person, often at maybe the toughest time of their life, the most vulnerable time of their life, we have to hold ourselves to a really, really high standard because that person is vulnerable. And if there's a power differential in the work situation or in the therapeutic relationship, we really have to be careful about expressing our views, personal views, political views, whatever it may be. And as a client or a patient, you have the right to set expectations and to set boundaries. And you should think about that before you enter those relationships. And you probably heard me talk about over the years the patient bill of rights, whether you're seeing a physician or a therapist or whatever. And it requires you thinking before you go, what do I expect out of this relationship? What do I want out of this relationship? And what are my rights in asking questions and getting answers? In fact, on my website, I have a patient bill of rights. If you're going in to see a doctor for a condition that you have rights. If you go into a therapeutic relationship, you have rights to have certain protections, to have certain boundaries respected, and you need to think about that before you go in. And if you don't feel comfortable, you have the right to withdraw from those relationships. So don't ever feel like just because someone is an expert or has letters behind their name or parchment up on the wall that you're in a one-down situation. That's not true. You have rights. And if you feel like, I don't have the strength to express those, then take someone with you that you trust. Take a parent, take a spouse, take a friend, take someone until you establish the situation where you feel like, hey, I feel safe, I'm okay here. Because whether it's a physician or a psychologist or a counselor, they're working for you. And don't ever, ever forget that. I want to thank all of my guests tonight, and a special thanks to Dr. Andrew Hartz for joining us tonight, and thank you for what you're doing with your Open Therapy Institute. And I want to thank you at home for finding us here on Dr. Phil's Merit TV. For more information about Dr. Hartz's organization, there will be a link on drphil.com. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.